Good afternoon and welcome to this year's World Engineering Day. My name is Ori Van. I'm here to introduce our special guests for this event. Construction and Engineering Digest CED, in collaboration with Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN, presents Building Sustainable Cities in Africa, Engineers' Perspective. Before we start the conversation, I would like to make some important introductions. Our keynote speakers today are Engineer Mustafa Balarabe Shehu, FNSE, FSESN. He is the Executive Vice President of World Federation of Engineering Organizations. You're welcome, sir. Engineer Ali A. Rabiu, FNFC, the President, Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. You're welcome. Engineer Muhammad Babagana, FNSE. He is the Executive Vice President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, NSC. You're welcome, sir. Our speakers for today are ING Mrs. Kalian Bauchedit. She is the President of Federation of African Engineering Organization. You're welcome, ma'am. Engineer Martin Manuel, Chairman Capacity Building Committee, World Federation of Engineering Organization. You're welcome, sir. Engineer Bikunle Ogumbayo, FNFC, FAENG, Chairman Qua Consultants Limited. You're welcome, sir. Engineer Mrs. Margaret Oguntala, FNFC, Chief Executive Officer, BAMSAT Nigeria Limited. Others will be introduced as they join in this conversation. I hand over to Mr. Kenneth Odushola Stevenson, who is the lead moderator of this conversation. Thank you.
My name is Kenneth Odushola Stevenson. I am the publisher of CED Magazine and CEO of Century 21 Systems Communications Limited, the publishers of the magazine. And today, which is the second in the series, last year when we celebrated the World Engineering Day, some of the people would be wondering, why is CED, celebrating World Engineering Day? Why not the engineers? The engineers are doing their own thing from the journalism aspect of it. Construction and Engineering Digest magazine, the last 25 years and above, has been reporting and projecting and creating the needed awareness in this industry. So therefore, we feel it's an obligation for us to continue to follow the trends and also go ahead to work with the practitioners and professionals in this industry to bring about discussions, conversation that will grow the sector and also build professionalism and capacity building in the industry. And that's why we are doing this, because sometimes we get some of this conversation where people will say, okay, CED, what's your own in all this? Why don't you leave the engineers to do their thing? Engineers don't advertise. Their project speaks for them. But we must advertise the engineers because they are professionals, just like bankers. So, which is one of the reasons we are doing some of the things we're doing for over 25 years. And we want to thank everyone that has continued to support us in the process of this our own journey. And we also will not take for granted the support we've always received from the Nigerian Society of Engineers from inception for quite a long time. Up to today, up to the current president, we've always enjoyed this particular relationship, and also from COREN, we also, enjoy this very important relationship with the organizations. And today, we are celebrating World Engineering Day in our own ways. When I say in our own ways, we are celebrating it because on the 4th of March is World Engineering Day, and the issue is about sustainability of whatever it is that you're talking about from the engineering perspective. And we felt it's just very important we talk about African cities, because what is happening today in Africa, for sustainable cities to happen, there's a need for planning. And it's one of the key things that we need to start doing in Africa. Because let me say a very big thank you to Engineer MB Mustafa Balarabe Shehu, the current Executive Vice President of the World Federation of Engineering Organization. He's been quite supportive. Let me say a very big thank you to Engineer Bikunle Ogumbayo, who has been very, very supportive. Let me say a big thank you and welcome Engineer Mrs. Oguntala, a former council member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and CEO of Bismarck Nigeria Limited. Let me also welcome to this particular thing Mr. Martins Manua. We believe that you are going to speak to the topic we have chosen today. She's the current president of FAO. So you can imagine she was sworn in this February and the first female to occupy that position. And we want to appreciate you for joining us today on this journey of celebrating the engineers on this as we mark the World Engineering Day. And we also have the current president who is possibly representing us today, or is here with us today to represent Koren from the government perspective. In other words, he will also throw in one or two words as to regulations and administration of engineering practice in Nigeria. And NSC, Engineer Babagana, thank you so much. But now let me go to the topic very, very quickly before I call on our keynote speaker. It is building sustainable cities for Africa, engineers' perspective. Why did we choose this topic? African cities are growing very rapidly. By 2019, for instance, we're not even talking about now, over 495 million Africans. Nearly 40% of the continent's population lived in urban areas. That number is projected to triple to more than 1.2 billion, or 60% of all Africans by 2050. For the United Nations Human Settlements Program, known as UN Habitat, the growth represents a dual challenge, helping Africans to better harness the productive potentials of their cities, but also to cope with the increased demand for municipal services and decent housing, so that more and more people are not obliged to crowd into an impoverished slums areas. And this statement was also made by a former mayor of Barcelona. I remember in the year 2004, I had the opportunity of, as the special advisor to Minister for Housing, to attend the Urban Forum in Barcelona. This issue was being discussed in terms of the growth of African continent and in terms of urban slums, and how African continents needed to just harness its own resources to come together to build cities so that we can reduce poverty and a lot more things. Now, I'm not going to be I'm not the keynote speaker, neither am I the speaker. I'm just a journalist on my own part to do what is right by, speaking from the other four arms of the realms. So therefore, it's the speakers that will do justice to this. But to lay the foundation for our conversation for today is our keynote speaker, whom I would like to call very quickly because of our time. And this is a professional thing, so we're going to stick to the time. But housekeeping, but let us be very, if we have questions, please, let's type it on the screen and we'll be able to take note of them, and we'll come back to question and answer later. And then if you also want to speak, please do raise up your hand. And please, if you are by any accident or mute your speaker, please mute it so that we will not be distracting ourselves from this conversation. So it's very important. And we have quite a number of professionals. Let me also welcome engineer Mrs. Mayen Adetiba. She's also joining us for today. And as soon as I keep seeing so many of our very, very senior professionals in engineering, we will continue to identify and also recognize you. Let me invite the Executive Vice President of the World Federation of Engineering Organization, Engineer Mustafa Balarabe Shehu, FNSC, to speak to the topic. Engineer Shehu was a past president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, also he's been past president of many things, so I'm not going to bore us by to go into it, but he is a personality that has transferred the whole engineering sector and also building capacity across the world, so to speak. Engineer Shehu, thank you very much for joining us. And now you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Kenneth, for the very generous introduction. I hope everybody is hearing me.
We are hearing you, sir.
Yeah, that's good. Well, before I go into my presentation, let me acknowledge and welcome some of my very good friends, who are leaders of the engineering profession, globally. Of course, let me first welcome Martin Manua, the immediate past president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations. And let me especially welcome the president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, my sister, Engineer Kalian Boshdid. And of course, I've seen Engineer Kunle Ogumbayo, who is my bosom friend here in Nigeria, former president of Koren and chairman KOA Consults. And of course, our elder Kwame Boache, Dr. Kwame Boache, and of course, the NSC president, the current president, and the incoming president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. So, of course, all the participants here are my very good friends. Let me heartily welcome everyone to this webinar organized by the Construction and Engineering Digest in association with the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. So with these few remarks, let me share my screen, because I know there are so many people who are going to say a lot about this topic. Our topic of presentation today is Building Sustainable City in Africa, the Engineer's Perspective. And we have the overview of my presentation will run like this. We have meet the presenter, a little about me, then about WFEO, then about World Engineering Day, then some definitions relating to the subject matter, then Sustainable Development Goal number 11, then my story on developing a sustainable city, then Africa urbanization, Africa major cities, Africa urban agenda, then sustainable cities in Africa, role of engineering, then way forward, then conclusion. So this is the outline of my presentation. And even though I have been generously introduced by the organizer of the program, but for those who have not heard him very well, my name is Engineer Mustafa Balarabe Shehu, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, a fellow of the Solar Energy Society of Nigeria. And I am currently the Executive Vice President of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, a past president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, a past president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and the chairman CEO of MBS Engineering Limited, based in Nigeria. And I'm an engineer with 5 years of in engineering management and leadership. So that's little about me. Then about WFEO, I feel we have to talk a little about WFEO in my capacity as Vice President of the WFEO. On occasions like this, we have to tell the audience what WFEO is in brief. It is an international organization for the engineering profession that was founded in 1968 under the auspices of the UNESCO. And we have over 91 national engineering institutions with over 10 international engineering institutions, which are jointly representing more than 30 million engineers globally. And WFEO is recognized non-governmental organizations at UNESCO with associate status. And we are a member of the United Nations Scientific and Technological Community Major Group of the United Nations. And it operates with 10 standing technical committees and 10 working groups. And we have an executive council made up of members of the executive board and the chairman of standing technical committees. The executive board is made up of the president, executive vice president, 2 executive vice president, president-elect, treasurer, immediate past president, and the executive director. And of course, the secretariat of The federation is based in Paris, in UNESCO building. And on March 2018, WFAO co-organized with UNESCO a half-day symposium at the headquarters of the of UNESCO in Paris. And that the top representatives from UNESCO, WFAO, national and international members, and partnering NGOs represented their views on advancing sustainable development goals. I'm glad some of us who are participating in this webinar were part of that unique event, especially myself, Engineer Martin Manua, and Valerie Agberaba, and Papias Kazawadi. Then there was also the Paris Declaration that was signed by the by the WFEO and the UNESCO Assistant Director General for Science, the first ever joint commitment by UNESCO and any other organization to promote engineering as a means of building sustainable development. And this Paris Declaration was actually signed on March 18th, March 7, 2018 in Paris. And the aim of the declaration is to make sure that there is a very strong partnership and alliance between the engineering community and UNESCO towards advancing the sustainable development goals, to make sure that these goals are being achieved before the year 2030. Then World Engineering Day. We all have been talking about World Engineering Day, and I believe this is what has brought us this afternoon to have this webinar. And the WFO, it has been, you know, a project that has been promoted by the World Federation of Engineering Organization over the years. You know, it is not easy for UNESCO to declare any international day or United Nations, but with sustained and constant effort by the world engineering community, we were able to get it in 2019. And towards this, we had to get over 80 letters, support letters from international and national engineering institutions, academies of engineering, national commissions to UNESCO, from about, that are representing about 23 million engineers around the world. And as a Nigerian, I am proud to say that Nigeria is part of those countries that have given support letter toward the World Engineering Day. And many, African countries, including Zimbabwe, including Ghana, Rwanda, Kenya, Zambia, Sierra Leone, you know, many of these of our African countries. So it is our joint effort and collaboration that has yielded to the realization of the World Engineering Day. 4th March was chosen to commemorate the date that WFO was established, which was on the same day in 1968. On 4th March 1968, that was the day the official, establishment of WFO was really done in London, precisely in the premises of the IC Institution of Civil Engineers, London. And the first World Engineering Day was celebrated last year on 4th March 2020. So by extension, what we are celebrating today or this year is the second World Engineering Day. Then the day, what are we expected to do, during the World Engineering Day? We are expected to showcase the contribution of engineers and engineering to sustainable development and modern life. In every country in the world, engineers have done a lot to bring the country, to bring the community to where it is today. And these are the contributions we need to showcase in our various countries to also educate people on the importance of engineering to modern living, and also to educate engineering, especially the younger ones, how important it is to contribute to the society through engineering system, and most importantly, government, civil societies, the public and private sectors, schools, universities, engineering institutions, more generally citizens are expected to make the International Day a springboard for awareness raising action. We are supposed to propagate this day to let everybody in our vicinity know about engineering, know about the contribution of engineers in our society. So that is the essence of this day, and I'm glad a lot of us are doing a lot of programs. What I just want to add is that I want all the engineering institutions in Africa and the world over to please make sure that they register their activity, including this particular activity. I want the Nigerian Society of Engineers to register this particular activity on the WED website, because we are monitoring what is happening globally, and we want to see how many activities have taken place to commemorate the World Engineering Day. So I want all the presidents, the chairmen of branches and divisions of our national institutions and international institutions to make sure that they go to the WFE website and go to the World Engineering Day website to register their respective events, to make sure that this event is registered internationally at WFU and UNESCO. So now coming back to our topic, development of sustainable cities in Africa. It is important for us to know that cities occupy just 3% of the Earth's lands, but account for more than 60 to 80% of energy consumption and at least 70% of carbon emissions, thus creating safe, resilient, and sustainable city is a top priority of the Sustainable Development Goals. So if we look at the fact that city is just a very small percentage, but the energy consumption, is more there, and as of today, almost half of the population of the world are living in cities, and in years to come, there will be more people living in cities than living in rural areas. So there is a strong need for us to look at what is happening in the cities, how are our cities developed, what are the issues, what are the problems, how sustainable our infrastructure is to sustain the kind of population we're envisaging to have. And sustainable cities can be defined as resilient habitat for existing populations without compromising the ability of future generations to experience the same. So what we are trying to say is that we want to have an environment where we live very, very comfortable, but trying to live comfortable, we should also be mindful of what will be the fate of our children and our grandchildren when they come. So we shouldn't go into anything that will compromise their future, and that will compromise their comfort, and that will compromise their safety. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 11 defines sustainable city as those that are dedicated to achieving green sustainability. And the 7 outcome targets for attaining SDG 11 includes safe and affordable housing, affordable and sustainable transport system, inclusive and sustainable urbanization, protect the world's cultural and natural heritage, reduce the adverse effects of natural disasters, reduce the environmental impact of cities, provide access to safe and inclusive green and public spaces, ensure the ability of future generations to experience the same, just as I have said earlier. So these are the outcome targets. We have to make sure that we create a safe and affordable housing. Safe housing in terms of security, in terms of resilience in adverse weather condition, and it also has to be affordable. You can't say that you have a standard housing template that is not affordable for the majority of your population. So these are the targets as far as the SDG 11 are concerned, concerning sustainable cities. Then, if we look at our urban population, you discover that share of urban population living in slums rose to 24% in 2018. And because if you look at the implications of COVID-19 implications, you discover that over 90% of COVID cases are in urban areas. I mean, we are all, human beings, and we have villages. We have, some of us live in cities, but we have a lot of relatives in the villages. If you go to the villages, all these issues about COVID-19, they don't even talk about it. They just see it like a hearsay. So most of the COVID-19 cases are really in the city. So there has to be a concerted effort to make sure that the cities are safe and the cities are settlements that are not really very risky for every person living there. And look at this slide is showing that only half of the world's urban population has convenient access to public transport. And when we are saying what we are talking about public transport, we are talking of your proximity to a public transport should not be more than half a kilometer or 1 kilometer distance. And air pollution has caused about 4.2 million premature deaths in 2019. And of course, air pollution is something that is predominantly in cities. You don't find air pollution in villages and hamlets. Okay. On this one, I just want to tell this, my audience about my small experience in developing sustainable city here in Nigeria. I was privileged to have something to do with the Eco-Atlantic City here in Lagos. It is one of the largest seafront developments in the world. It is being built on land reclaimed from Atlantic Ocean and acts as a barrier for the city of Lagos against the ocean. My involvement is in the provision of reliable electricity supply for the city. So we did the feasibility studies for extension of 132 kV line, which will be upgraded to 330 kV line from Lekki to Eco-Atlantic City. And the city is a balance between eco-friendliness and practicality. And it will host new businesses that will bolster the economy through tourism and innovation. There are a lot of green initiatives that will breathe life into the city. Roads are lined by trees, all of which are grown in a nursery further down the coast of Lagos. These trees, about 200,000 of them, will provide shade and greenery to the new community, which will eventually be home to about 300,000 people. The city will be self-sufficient in telecommunications and power, and it will answer to traffic issues by offering an 8-lane highway and other modes of transportation, including waterways, ferry system, and a network of roads that will connect all districts across the city. So this is a city being developed. Some buildings have started coming up now, and of course, the developers are looking for a lot of investors, including my friends who are not Nigerians. You can please come to Lagos and have a good investment here in Eco-Atlantic City. Even though I have not been commissioned as a marketer, but as a professional engineer who is associated with the project, I feel it is very good for me to see it wherever an opportunity manifests itself. So this is a map showing urbanization in Africa, and we have cities that are that have about 10 million or more population, cities that are between 5 million to 10 million, cities that are between 1 million to 5 million, then cities that are about between 750 to 100 to 1,000. And the growth rates also varies from one city to the other. Some are 1%, some are 1 to 3%, some are 3 to 5%, and some can even be more than 5% plus. So the rate at which our cities grows internationally, not only in Africa, is really monumental, and that is why it is very important to look at the issues concerning city critically. This also is another graph showing how population of cities and population of rural population varies. You will see that from this graph in Europe around 1950 the population of the urban the population of urban population, I mean urban and rural population, almost became the same. But in Latin America, it will be around 1961, and in Asia around 2018. But in Africa, we cannot reach that level till around 2037. The tipping point, that is the year in which urban population becomes larger than rural population. So you see the rate at which the urban population increases is very high, but of course in Africa the number of urban dwellers will reach the number of rural dwellers around 2037, and let's be frank about it. 2037 is very much close by, and we are talking of in the next 16 years. So if in the next 16 years you are going to have people living in the city greater than people living in the rural areas, it means we really have to make our cities very lively. And this slide also shows how our cities are compared to other countries. I mean, we have to be mindful of the fact that Africa is so diverse, in the sense that we have countries that have very large cities, and such large cities are even bigger than other countries within Africa. Like Cairo, for example, even though this slide is really much outdated, because we are talking of figures in 2015, which is about 6 years ago. But definitely it is indicative of even what is happening today. Cairo, for example, which is the most populous city in Africa, is more than Rwanda and Sierra Leone put together. Cairo city alone. And Lagos city alone is more than Burundi and Namibia put together. So you see some of our cities are more than some countries put together. And you see Kinshasa, you see Johannesburg, you see Cape Town, more than Bosnia and Herzegovina. You see Kano, my own hometown, is more than Gabon and Guinea-Bissau. So what we are trying to say that is that we have to, the fact that we have such large cities as big as some countries, it means that we really have to take these issues of the infrastructure in our cities very seriously, and make sure that as time grows and as population, continues to grow high, we have to, continuously make our infrastructure sustainable and also capable of meeting the demands of the ever-increasing population. Then the African Urban Agenda of the African Union. The African Urban Agenda program works to link people-centered processes with leadership, vision, and advocacy to increase the buy-in in a nexus of bottom-up and top-down process. Thereby, these specific programs are to raise the profile of urbanization as an imperative for development in Africa, stimulate debates and buy-in for sustainable human settlements and urbanization among Africa's head of states, support inclusive participatory human settlement development in Africa, structural transformation, and attainment of Agenda 2063 through regional and global coalitions and commitments. Then support African countries in preparing national reports, building consensus around identified priorities, and enhancing advocacy and buy-in at national global levels. So this is to show you that as a continent, we have an agenda to do, which we pursue as far as our development of our cities are concerned. And this agenda has to be pursued by all the national governments in the African, who are members of the African Union Commission. And this slide is showing how climate change affects our cities. A sustainable city will have to deal with the crisis of climate change. Addressing the effects of climate change and mitigating such will be done through a variety of engineering solutions that will be presented in subsequent slides. There are three main effects expected from climate change in Africa: meteorological events, that tropical storm, hydrological events, floods, mass movement, climatological events, extreme temperature, droughts. So this map actually is showing African cities and their associated climate risks. So each city has its own associated climate risk, which has been identified here. And our duty as engineers, as government officials, as citizens, is to make sure that we take action to mitigate this risk. And this risk, in various forms and shapes, like water stress, sea level rise, floods, droughts, heat waves, dust, and storms. So you see, each country has its own risk elements. So if you identify the risk to which you are exposed to, then you work towards mitigating such risk to make sure that you have sustainable cities. And mitigating this climate change can be done by reducing greenhouse gas emission by means of sustainable energy technologies and increased energy efficiency, energy storage and transport, sustainable transportation, sustainable housing. And of course, when we talk of increased energy efficiency, we are talking of an important area where energy efficiency is seen to be increased in industrial energy efficiency. Industries are particularly important, as the industrial sector is projected to account for the largest share of global energy demand by 2035. Another area is in the efficient building designs. Energy efficiency is one of the most effective and yet least applied means to reduce greenhouse gas emission. The regulatory indicators for sustainable energy, a World Bank initiative, is a set of indicators to help compare national policy regulatory framework for sustainable energy that shows that African countries are slowly embracing energy efficiency management, with South Africa and Algeria leading in compliance. So while I commend South Africa and Algeria, it is very important that other countries also, like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ghana, we all embrace this energy efficiency because through, coherent, adherence with energy efficiency, management, you optimize the energy you produce and thereby saving a lot of energy to make sure that you supply the same power is used to do more work than it used to do without using energy efficiency policies or initiatives. And of course, when we are talking of sustainable cities, we have to talk of sustainable transport. And sustainable transport within the cities, has to meet the access needs of the present generation, and it has to allow future generation to meet their own access needs, which will grow because of economic growth and rising population. It has to be powered by renewable energy resources as much as possible, and we will have to make sure that it does not pollute the air, land, water beyond the planet's ability to absorb. Then it has to be economically and financially affordable, and it has to support a desired quality of life while supporting local, national, and global sustainable development goals. Then, among the sustainable energy options we have, in Africa, is that some of which are this bus rapid transit system using electric cars or light rail and trams, ferry transportation, and suitable locations. Of course, unlike in the European countries, walking may not be really, walking and biking may not be really a sustainable option due to our weather condition. Here we are, most of the African countries are very, very hot. So to advocate for cycling and walking may not really, be acceptable to the generality of our populace. Unlike other climes in Europe where the weather is there they're very cold, and really cycling and walking will do a lot and will be more acceptable than here in Africa. Then, of course, talking of sustainable energy also, while primarily sustainable energy is sourced from renewable sources, non-renewable sources can also be used sustainably and responsibly. Renewable sources that can be used into power cities can be situated either in the cities or in remote locations with the power delivered via transmission lines. This includes, but are not limited to, what I have listed here. And then, of course, energy storage and power supply reliability. As renewable energy is typically subject to fluctuations, on-demand power supply requires variety of new technologies in data processing, flexible power supply, smart grid, and energy storage efficiency. Upgrading and expanding power transmission lines to larger grids can also counterbalance fluctuation in power production. All of this will have to come together to resolve issues with regards to network instability resulting from fluctuations inherent in renewable energy production. And that is why, as much as we are advocating for inclusion of renewable energy in our energy mix, we have to make sure that as we develop renewable energy schemes, we have to do a detailed analysis, network analysis, this system stability, to make sure that what we are injecting will not destabilize the system. Also taking cognizance of the fact that some of the source of the renewable energy schemes are not really continuous, like the solar schemes. You get a lot of solar energy during the day, but during the night you don't get it. So what will be the effect of the system? When you inject so megawatts during the day, at a blow, what will be the effect of the system when you remove such amount of power toward the evening. So all this need to be checked very, very clearly through stability studies and power evacuation studies. Then we also have to look at solid and waste management when we are talking of sustainable cities. We have to develop and evaluate energy neutral or energy positive, cost effective wastewater treatment technologies suitable for low, middle, and high income settings that provide enhanced contaminant removal, minimize energy consumption, and promote safe water reuse. Develop and evaluate approaches to water, sanitation, and hygiene challenges in low-income communities. For solid waste, systems can be developed for landfill, gas utilization, materials recovery facilities, eliminating open dumping, open burning, and waste leakage, improving disposal quality, developing organic waste recovery infrastructure, and improving recycling. So these are some of the steps we must take to have a sustainable city. As far as solid and liquid waste management is concerned. Then when we talk about water resources and water quality, we have to develop low-cost desalination and water reuse technologies, including strategies to reduce energy use and manage or reuse water streams to minimize environmental impacts. Develop water supply and water quality forecasting tools, including low-cost distributed sensing system to anticipate water availability and quality threats. And then develop improved diagnostic tools and predictive modeling approaches to understand the state of aging water infrastructure and develop cost-effective strategies to maintain the water services provided by existing infrastructure. It has been a norm in many African cities that you find water supply schemes as old as 40 years, sometimes even 50 years. And when these schemes were developed, actually the population was not up to half of the population it was serving. What it was serving that time is not up to half. The population now has almost doubled, but governments after government, we have not been moving, to meet the increasing demand by through increasing population. So you see that you will experience a lot of stress on the existing facilities of water generation, of water treatment, of water distribution. And that is why up to today in many African cities, you find water supply and distribution is still a challenge in the 21st century. So these are issues we cannot take. We should stop to be taking them lightly, and all hands must be on deck to make sure that this basic essential of life is being met, not only in our cities but even in our villages and the smaller communities. Then, when we talk of cities, we have to talk about housing also, because each one of us, we almost, we stay in the house more than 75% of our life, maybe 85%, because whether you are in the office or you are in the house, you are still, in a compartment. So, what are the issues about housing? Sustainable housing refers to housing development that generates low waste, encourages the practice of reuse and recycling, together with lower life cycle environmental impacts and cost, better reliability, less maintenance, and greater user satisfaction. A complex web of interrelationships between sustainability and housing is addressed by the policies for sustainable housing. These policies consider a spectrum of underlying conditions to achieve sustainability in housing development along the 4 dimensions of sustainability: environmental, social, cultural, and economic, such as impacts of the environment and climate change, durability and resilience of homes, economic activities in housing and their links with wider economy, cultural and social fabric of communities, and impacts of housing on poverty alleviation, social development, and quality of life. So these are the underlying policies that should govern our housing developments in our cities. And then we are bringing some examples of some housing projects in Africa, like the sandbag houses, Freedom Park, Cape Town in South Africa, built using eco beam system, which replaces brick and mortar with sandbags. It is reported to be strong, safe, and cheap way of delivering affordable houses. We also have El Mandara Eco Resort in Fayoum, Egypt. This is a tourist destination that was renovated using local sustainable building materials, including mud bricks and farm fronts to provide shading from desert sun. We also have Eastgate Center in Harare, Zimbabwe. I think near my friend's house, Martin Manoa. The Eastgate Center has a ventilation system which operates similarly to the self-cooling mounds of African termites, with its temperature staying regulated all year round, dramatically reducing energy consumption to 10% of the energy a conventional building of its size will use. So any design to reduce energy consumption is a design towards sustainability in buildings. Then here we are also bringing some examples of some urban infrastructure projects in Africa, like the Lagos BRT. If we know how Lagos was some 30-40 years ago, those of us who are based in Lagos or who have been opportune to work in Lagos, I could remember when I first graduated in 1985. My first job was in Lagos in 1986, and when I went there, the transport system, they call it Molue. The buses, very old buses, very poorly maintained, produces a lot of soot in the environment. But you see, Lagos State decided to say, look, there has to be a stop to this. Many buses that emitting a lot of carbon dioxide into the environment. Then, so they developed this bus rapid transport system, BRT, in March 2008. And it was a 22-kilometer project connecting Lagos mainland with the island, and it became the first dedicated bus route in sub-Saharan Africa. The BRT runs a 16-hour operation using 220 buses to move more than 200,000 passengers daily. In its first 2 years operation, it moved more than 120 million passengers. And of course, I know I am among these 120 million passengers, because there was a time I went to Lagos and I said, let me experience this BRT system. And there's also another project in Nairobi, the Nairobi Rivers Rehabilitation Project, which aims to upgrade the quality, availability, and capacity and sustainability of wastewater services in Nairobi through the construction, rehabilitation, or extension of sewerage services and wastewater treatment plants. The project improved the quality of water and reduced the incidence of typical waterborne diseases by nearly 46% in 1 year. And the Abidjan Urban Transport Project also was initiated to meet the dual challenge of population growth and rapidly expanding car fleet in the city. It consisted of construction of the 4th bridge in Abidjan and the development of transformative roads in the city, assessment of the air quality, urban waste management, and strengthening of existing capacities in traffic regulation, urban planning, and road safety. So all these are initiatives done because probably they were thinking that they were like in Lagos. I know there has been a lot of proposal for underground train system, but the reality on the ground, shows that it is extremely expensive almost practically unaffordable by both the federal government of Nigeria and the Lagos state, and that is why initiatives like this have to be taken very seriously. And actually, it is a lot of, I mean, the movement of people from one point to another within the city. There's also another another project here I'm reporting from Greater Banjul Area Sustainable Urban Development Program, which is activities that will include capacity building in the formulation of master plan for urban development using digital technologies, which are intended to greatly improve the operational efficiency of 3 municipalities and to provide support for Banjul Port Extension. And here I am also bringing a sustainable development project in not really a city here, but in a community in Sokoto State. It is a grid-connected hybrid solar PV mini grid power project in Toranka village, Yabo local government area of Sokoto State here in Nigeria. And the project was initiated by the Department of Renewable Energy and Rural Access of the Federal Ministry of Power Works and Housing under the Renewable Energy Micro Utility Program. The project supplies 24/7 power to 350 households and 20 small businesses covering about 1,700 people. The project also benefited from financial contribution from several stakeholders. The community provided the land with title document and provided some free service during the construction. The project is in the process of being concessioned to a private operator via competitive bidding process in line with the Nigerian laws. This is a project that has actually taken place, and the people in the community are enjoying the electricity supply 24/7, and are also interestingly very willing and ready to pay for whatever they consume, at the end of the month. So it is really cost reflective tariff, and the community are paying for it gladly without any problem, because they realize the importance of having power supply 24 hours a day. So, of course, when we are talking of sustainable cities, we also talk of sustainable smart cities. But of course, there's a difference between sustainable city or smart city. We can have a city that is not sustainable and not smart also. We can also have a smart city that is not sustainable, and we can also have a sustainable city that is not smart. But of course, the best option is to have a city that is sustainable and smart, and that is, going a level higher. So smart technologies can be used to capitalize on advances in sensing technology, data, connectivity, artificial intelligence, and participatory governance to optimize operation and resource management. Despite encouraging development, adaptive full-scale smart cities is still a long way off. Example of such in medium-income countries is collaboration between World Bank, the ride-hailing platforms Grab, and the government of Cebu City, the Philippines. Allow the city government to use GPS data from taxi drivers' smartphone to track traffic patterns and incidents to inform emergency responses and transport planning. So these are how we can use to make our cities more lively and more responsive to our needs and to our problems. So what are the way forward? The way forward is in developing smart cities, or in transforming cities, existing cities, into smart cities, into sustainable cities, is that we have to have policies, continental policies and national policies with associated roadmaps. And then we need to have specific programs that are scalable and implementable at local level. Then we have to have plans plans. When we talk of plans, we have to talk of plans at continental level, at national level, at regional level, and at local level also. And then the culture also, we have to make sure that our culture also is consistent with these plans and with our aspirations. And we have to, while trying to transform ourselves into sustainable or modern cities, we have to be conscious of preserving our heritage and our local culture. We have to, any society has to have its own identity. You can't say you don't have identity and your identity that has been built over the years. And there has to be interrelationship or interaction of policies and programs across the sectors to be considered. Then, of course, sustainability must be the center point of all activities. All activities we have to do, we have to weigh how sustainable is the activity as far as we are concerned today, and how is it going to affect our coming generation. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the development of sustainable cities and communities and remodeling of existing ones to become sustainable is imperative to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals number 11. And of course, it has effect on meeting many other development goals also. And therefore, governments at all levels, business communities, and professionals like you and I need to come together more than any other time in the past to address these challenges, which are practically surmountable. Because I firmly believe all the challenges we are having in Africa are surmountable, but we have to have the resolve to surmount the problems, and we have to put the energy and the dedication and commitment and the wherewithal also to surmount the problem. I thank you very much for being patient with me in going through this presentation. Nagodi. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening.
I want to believe all of us were taking notes. And then now that the presentation is over, we can move on to the next person. We have next the speaker, Engineer Martins Manohar. But however, before we bring in Engineer Martins, let me recognize the participant, Engineer George Okoroma, FNSC, the president of ACEN, is here. ACEN is Association of Consulting Engineers Nigeria. And also let me recognize Engineer Dr. Felicia Agumbata, FNSC, past president of APWEN. Let me recognize Engineer Mrs. Iliat Amusu, fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Mrs. Joanne Maduka, FNSC, past president of the Academy of Engineering. Engineer Martins Manohar, who is the past president of FAO, is going to be speaking next. And Engineer Olu Ogundiyile, FNSC, chairman of Kenol Nigeria Limited. We also have a town planner in our midst, Idris Sikirat Oziobu is joining us. Engineer Kunle Adebaju, fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. We also have from Ghana, Engineer Kwame Bokije, Engineer Abbas MA, Engineer Funlayo Kadiri, Engineer Kazamatu PPS. I'm sure he's also joining from outside Nigeria. Engineer Demola Olufemi, who is a former president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and Dr. Alagbe. We will continue to recognize people, participants at this event. However, let's just move on. We are used to holding out a very conducive environment, Sheraton 5-star hotels, but here we are with the new normal. We are able to do this. It's still part of a growing trends globally. Engineer Martins Manohar, if you are ready with your paper, please, can you go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Engineer Mustafa Shehu, the president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, Madam Khalil, and the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, my friend Mohammed Babagana, the president of Koren, and all distinguished colleagues, guests, all protocol observed. My conversation has been made easy. I'm going to contextualize the discussion. I will also give the climate change a reaction to smart cities. I will talk about the 4.0 and digitization of African cities, which will make them smarter. So I am very, very honored to be part of this conversation. Science, technology, engineering, and innovation provide the basis and background for development. In fact, one of my mentors, engineer Kwame Boche has told us that without engineering, Africa is going nowhere. And also, we need to work with our governments in making sure that our national development policies depend on STEM policies, innovation, as well as on partnership with the professional services. We in the construction industry are looking for a well-engineered and sustainable green infrastructure, which will be the cornerstone of our development. May I emphasize that the economists are very smart. You know, they are smarter than us. The lawyers are also smarter. Most of them are making policies without input from technology. But that is futile, because the GDP proxy they use of dollars does not make sense. The only GDP that has made sense or proxy is the GDP of the concrete and steel and construction that countries are getting into. This is the level of development, which means engineering should be at the cornerstone of development. So we really need to maintain our infrastructure as well as ensure that Africa catches up. We are lucky that as Africa, we have the population dividend. What we call the population dividend, we have the youngest population under 25, and the industrial 4.0 revolution will look into these smart skills, which therefore make Africa the most competitive of all the continents that we have. So I'm so proud that as Africa, we need to ensure that sustainable development, issues like climate adaptation, mitigation, are some of the things like the previous speaker has already spoken to. Again, infrastructure services are those services that I think, in my opinion, from the previous speaker, who is one of my mentors as well, is that infrastructure sectors must develop a highly technical, interconnected system, one which looks at how do we deal with the vagaries of change. And therefore, I say engineering professionals are the custodians of infrastructure construction and maintenance, and they must be groomed to be such. And therefore, they must be ethical and conduct themselves professionally, and then they must also be up to date with the rapidly changing technology. I'm happy Engineer Shehu has spoken about an example of the Lagos Atlantic City. I will talk about Lancelia. Lancelia is also a planned smart city for South Africa, briefly. And let us also use skills across Africa to develop our own cities. Why are we inviting China, the European Union, and the United States engineers to do the work that we can do in our backyard? So we must also ensure that we design that infrastructure that is environmentally friendly, that is green, and also that is smart. What do engineers do? Engineering is a spectrum of technicians, technologists, and engineers. The other ones are operatives. They operate the system, they maintain the system. They do, therefore, if we design beautiful infrastructure and we don't have any maintenance and technological plan to design, maintain, and keep it. So it's very important. So it's very, very important that the engineers conceptualize, design, and implement these solutions. And therefore, African engineers need to be certified under the under the Washington Accord, which is for the engineers, the CED Accord, which is for the technologists, and the Dublin Accord, which is for the technicians. I'm happy the former president will speak to that. We are signing the Africa, Asian, Pacific Engineer, where Korean Engineers Institution Rwanda, Engineering Council of Zimbabwe, EXA, will now license engineers and ensure that they're as good as any other engineers in the world. So it's high time that academia and industry work together. And we must make sure that we bridge the gap between theory and practice. We use the word praxis, where engineers are supposed to be our solution. Kofi Annan, one of our brothers, and the Secretary General of the United Nations says they challenged us to mobilize global science and technology to tackle the interlocking crisis of hunger, disease, environmental degradation, and conflict that are holding back the developing world. That was Africa. Again, Africa must work on Industry 4.0, which were exactly where we are now, engineering for sustainable development to achieve that Africa that we want. So we must achieve a connected world where digitalization, the last stage, we must leapfrog and go into these technologies for the industrial 4.0 revolution. For smart cities, we need mobile devices, interconnection, IoT platforms, which is the Internet of Everything. Then location detection of technologies. We are also looking at advanced human-machine interfaces. We are looking at advanced human-machine interfaces, authentication and fraud detection, 3D, and now I understand we are into 7D printing. And 7D basically is just the environmental, which is the 3 phases of the size, dimensions, and then economics, the budgets, and also the online work platforms. Smart sensors, big data analytics, and advanced algorithms, like when we look into virtual realities, we are also looking at machine learning and things like that. Multiple customer interaction and augmented reality and wearables and cloud computing. These again are the 3 dimensions of the Industry 4.0, which is like the digital business models and customer access, also the digitization and integration of vertical and horizontal value chains, as well as digitization of product and services offerings as engineers' perspective. Engineering, technology, and innovation has been the breakthroughs of how our knowledge moves on. We are now on our 6th wave, where we are now looking at sustainability, radical resource productivity, whole system design, biomimicry, green chemistry, industry ecology, renewable energy, and green nanotechnology. So this is the way, like my predecessor, mentor, and brother Mustafa has challenged Africa for us to go green. And the Atlantic Lagos City and Lancelia are 2 examples that we do. Here I give you a 3D building. This building was printed on a printer. you know, it's something that is the marveling. You see, it has shaken the world. Michael Hansmeyer and Benjamin Dillenbaker, they unveiled the world's first 3D printed room. The elaborate 11-ton installation is printed with 11 millions of incredible detailed surfaces, and it stands almost 11 feet by 52 feet wide. Wow. Global information, planning is where we should go. Again, GIS provides smart cities. We determine site locations, market analysis and planning, logistics and routing, environmental engineering, geoinformatic patterns and analysis, as well as applications for mobile users, logistics and location intelligence. I think this is, I'm preaching to the converted. Africa should leapfrog and plan like that. What are green cities or green infrastructure? These are obviously, we are looking at reduction of land use and use of hard surfaces, reduction of raw materials, resources, depletion. We must reuse, recycle, and reduce waste. Again, we are looking at closing of material flows, avoidance of reduction in the use of hazardous substances like asbestos, mercury, and many of this, reduction of our carbon footprints and emissions. Again, I thank Engineer Mustafa Shehu for making my life easy. The green infrastructure for Africa would require the reduction of impacts on the environment, protection of the health and comfort of building occupants, users, and neighbors, preservation of the building's cultural value. Africa is the cultural capital of the world. We should sell it. I hate it when other continents are stealing our heritages and mass producing it. That was done by the Germans, that was done by the UK when they colonized us, when they stole when they stole the Egyptian heritage, they stole the Great Zimbabwe birds, they stole the Nigerian rich heritage of our cultural value. Also, we need to maximize the building serviceability and also maximize the functionality of the infrastructure. Renewable energy is very important, and I'm talking of smart grids and smarter grids. And my friend Mustafa has spoken to this. I will not waste much of your time on it. So we need to make sure that sustainable cities squeeze the maximum utility for owners, users, and the wider public out of the lowest possible throughput of energy and raw materials, and with the minimum impacts on risks for environmental and human health. So smart buildings, we must make sure that our buildings are 5-star. They must be ensure that smart buildings are responsive to occupants, regulating energy use, and ensuring that they focus on how the city and buildings are designed and operated and renovated and demolished. This is cradle to cradle development. So green infrastructure for Africa is important. We must have automated ventilation control, improved insulation, restriction to sunlight, so that we have lighting opportunities, high efficiency, and using of LEDs, rainwater utilization, and high efficiency heating. Salient features, again, I've spoken to this. It's from cradle to cradle. We must look at standards and also make it mandatory for new development to have solar roofs and many other green fittings and retrofitting. The buildings that we have. Water conservation and water recovery is important. We must also look at zero carbon emissions, carbon neutrality by 2040, green living roofs. Green roofs are completely covered with vegetation. And then it brings evaporative cooling, it reduces stormwater runoffs. It also looks at eco and biomimicry standards. We have the Nelson Mandela Square Library at the Stellenbosch. Buildings like this one I'm showing here, where our plants and our gardens are on our roofs. These are smart buildings where you can play golf on top of these smart buildings, where you can have your flowers around, and where you can have these cities that are green. Biomimicry, we have one building in Harare, Eastview Mall. It's a very good example. They used the Andean philosophy of the ants, where when they are building, it is actually warm in winter and cool in summer. And there are circulation, ventilation systems. You don't need any air conditioning. Therefore, it's smart, green, and cheaper. Biomimicry is very important for us to design. This is the Eastgate Mall in Harare, Zimbabwe. And the example, also my experience, is the Lancelia Smart City Master Plan of South Africa. This is going to be one of the, I think it will be second to the Atlantic Lagos example that Mustafa has shared with us. It's going to be so smart that walking and all the things are around a small space of time. Transportation is organized. The master plan is such that the development needs to be compact with the mixed activities available within a few to 10 minutes walk. The 500 meters and the 1 kilometer that Mustafa spoke to. Reducing the need to commute. This includes easy access to new schools, shopping centers, hospitals, and clinics. Then greater distances will be serviced.
So now but in between this time, once we're able to get Engineer Martin back, we also have him to just round up his presentation so that we can take up. Engineer Idiat Amusu, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to start by recognizing the presence of the Executive Vice President of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations and past President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Mustafa Balarabi Shehu, fellow Nigerian Society of Engineers. I also recognize the immediate past speaker, Engineer Martin Manua, the immediate past President of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, the current President, Engineer Kalin Buchidi, and the President of NSC, President of COREN, distinguished fellows of the Nigerian Society of Engineers here, my elders, my colleagues, good afternoon. And happy World Engineering Day once more. Like Engineer Manua said earlier, I agree with him really that the job of presenting this lecture or paper has been made much easier by the keynote speaker. He has dwelt extensively on most of the areas that need to be dwelt on. And I say congratulations, my President, sir. So now I'll go to the paper. Yes, introduction. Well, a sustainable city is one which is designed with consideration for socioeconomic, environmental impact, and resilient habitats for existent populations without compromising the ability of future generations to experience the same. And can also be defined as one that is able to retain supply of natural resources while also achieving economic undermined development. Now, we are talking about sustainable cities now. And from this, you can see we have 17 global goals called the Sustainable Development Goals. And of the 17, the sustainable goals, which were adopted in 2015, and are universal. There are universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by the year 2030. There are 17 in number, like I've said, and they are each connected. You know, they are connected to one another, as well as the fact that they are also called global goals. The underlying principle is that the development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And the goals are targeted towards several life-changing, you know, like zero hunger, zero poverty, and so on. Now, the sustainable city, which is the number 11 of the goal of the SDG, is also known as Eco-City, and is the UN Sustainable Development Goal, which defines sustainable cities as those that are dedicated to achieving green sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. So, making cities sustainable, from what we have seen, means creating career business opportunities, safe and affordable housing, and building resilient societies and economies. It also involves investment in public transportation, creating green building public spaces, as have been enumerated by the past speakers, and improving urban planning and management, which will include participation and inclusive development. So why do we need sustainable cities? From this slide, you will see that the cause of poorly planned urbanization can be seen in some of the huge slums. Tangled traffic. You know, when you have tangled traffic, there's a lot of emission, you got a lot of gas emission, and then the greenhouse gas emissions as well. And then the sprawling suburbs all over the world also contribute to this. Slums are a drag, of course, on the GDP and the lower life expectancy. So by choosing to act sustainably, we choose to build cities where all citizens live a decent quality of life and form a part of the city's productive dynamic, creating shared prosperity and social stability without harming the environment. That is very important, because we know that in cities today, the major problem that we have is the harm to environment by gas emission, pollution of all sorts, and the rest. And then due to high concentration of people, infrastructures, housing, and economic activities, cities are vulnerable to climate change and natural disaster impacts. Sustainable cities across the world. This is just an example of some sustainable cities across the world. We have shown here Stockholm in Sweden with 14 islands and more than 50 bridges. Stockholm has made its fair share of improvements to help its citizens lead a more sustainable lifestyle. The city has an aim to remove the use of fossil fuels by year 2040, and is doing so by implementing new policies that encourage a greener society and becomes smarter. Biofuel is becoming more popular in Sweden and is generated from sewage waste powering vehicles around the city. In Stockholm as well, there is the reuse of wasted heat from its 30,000 seat stadium. And this recovered heat can be used to warm, is planned to be used to warm over 1,000 flats and making more efficient and sustainable living. African prosperity depends on sustainable cities. Of course, the prosperity of any nation or continent depends on sustainable cities. And although Africans are responsible for only a tiny share of the carbon emission that causes climate change, the continent is vulnerable to climate shock. African countries face ranges of risks, from more severe flooding to drought to heat stress and so on. And as people and economic activities in the urban areas increase, the risk of high carbon emission increases, and consequently the climate change. And these are things that we need to mitigate by building sustainable cities. Sustainable cities, the African stories, African success stories. Well, Engineer Shehu has talked about the Atlantic City, and Engineer Manuel has also used some examples. And I would also like to mention that in Lagos right now, there is this city that is just developing, and it's called the Alaro City. It's a green city. It is meant to be a green city. It's very sustainable in the sense that it will use gas generator, instead of diesel. And then the electricity will be powered by turbines. So we'll have much less pollution by the reduction of CO2 emission. And then the city is actually 3 times as big as Victoria Island. It's on the way to Epe from after Lekki, and it's worth viewing for engineers. So solar-powered street lights have been installed in Jinja, Uganda, and street lighting leads to safer streets with extended opening hours for smaller businesses. Solar-powered streets cost 25% less than conventional street lights. So if we're able to do that, we also save costs apart from making the city more sustainable. In Rwanda, citizens are encouraged to walk rather than drive, which, apart from reducing gas emission, also makes those who cannot afford cars feel better when everybody is cycling. And I also mentioned my experience when I traveled to Amsterdam last year. I found out that everywhere you go in front of the offices, you find several bicycles parked. Everybody rides the bicycle. No, most people don't drive. So you can be sure that in such a place, in such a city, the gas emission, the pollution, and the harm to lives will be much less. In Lagos and Johannesburg, as has also been mentioned by former speakers, the bus rapid transit systems, that's the BRT, have been constructed in these cities and have helped to reduce pollution and traffic congestion. Building sustainable cities in Africa. Now, to meet the standards set in the new urban agenda, cities in Africa must become far more reasonable for people to thrive and be environmentally friendly. If in Africa we are to achieve the aspirations laid out, there needs to be more focus on infrastructural development that will support sustainable cities that are totally integrated and cities that are people-focused. This will mean reviewing all current infrastructural plans and projects to understand what is the socioeconomic and environment impact of this. Environmental impacts of building sustainable cities. We all know that in building infrastructure, there is a lot of harm done to the environment if all these factors are not taken into consideration. The deterioration of environmental quality arising from urbanization is negatively impacting health, income, productivity, and the quality of life in African economies and cities. And in sub-Saharan Africa, public welfare losses resulting from exposure to household and ambient air pollution were estimated to amount to 3.8% of the regional gross domestic product. As cities grow, the magnitude of flood flows arising from any given rainfall event also grows. This means that the natural floodplain areas in low-lying parts of the city also increase. And according to a World Bank report, the expected annual losses from damage to structures in the Zimbabwe, the SLM floodplain alone amounts to an estimated $47.3 million per year. Engineering and sustainability. Now, we want to start talking now about the role of the engineers and what the relationship is between engineering and sustainability. From this slide, you can see I've attempted to define engineering. But engineering is the application of scientific and mathematical principles. We all know that. Engineering has always been a significant contributor to economic development, standard of living, well-being of the society, and its impacts on the cultural development and environment. And the nature of engineering and its importance is practically all aspects of the society. And this implies that engineering is indispensable towards attainment of sustainable development goals. This is talking about engineers in Africa and the fact that we must be challenged and supported to develop smart cities which involve integrated strategies to ensure that not only movement of people and goods is efficient, but also strategies for resilient power supply. We all know that in Nigeria, the bane of Nigeria now is the power sector. And once we are able to get that, then we can forge ahead in building a sustainable Nigeria. African engineers also need to be prepared to extend themselves beyond the current role of technical planners and purveyor of mechanical science to one that reclaims the redirecting of the great resources of power. Now, the engineering perspective to building sustainable cities and communities. Engineering solutions to urban infrastructures will be central to the determining of the quality of life for a rapidly growing urban population. It is therefore expedient on engineers to engineer the infrastructure for universal access to green source of energy, water, sanitation, and public services. The success of building the sustainable cities is anchored on engineers' ability to define efficient and eco-friendly infrastructures, renewable energy, and transportation systems. And in building sustainable cities, engineers are in the best position to pay attention to some of the challenges facing our planet, such as the need to reduce greenhouse emissions, pollution, and ensure efficient use of energy infrastructures. From planning to designing, building, operating, governing, maintaining, and decommissioning of infrastructures, engineers are in the front line of delivering the Sustainable Development Agenda. Engineering, of course, is also applied in the construction of green and renewable technology and recycle system for sustainable cities. Maintainability and ease of use is another engineering consideration during the construction. Users and city dwellers must be able to maintain the facility with minimum effort while prolonging the lifespan of the facility. Recommendations. Well, my first recommendation is that engineers must be ready to invest their time, knowledge, and skills into helping Africa build sustainable cities. Our tertiary institutions must incorporate sustainable design into relevant construction engineering courses. There's a lot of work to be done in waste management in Africa, especially both biodegradable and non-biodegradable wastes. Singapore has a very good success story on waste management. And in 2011, I remember that when I was chairman of the Nigerian Society of Engineers Ikeja branch, we went to Singapore for a course on waste management. And what we saw there was awesome. What we need to do now in Africa is to emulate such feats. The need for affordable and sustainable housing with means of transportation to link the various communities in Africa cannot be overemphasized. The state of building collapse in Nigeria is a classic case of study on why engineers and professionals in built environments are urgently needed to collectively plan our infrastructures. There's also a need for urgent actions by engineering bodies to increase the human capacity and knowledge required for building sustainable cities. African engineers must collaborate to share expertise and also broaden their experiences through international collaborations if we must achieve the goal. I'm glad that the immediate past president of FAO and even the current president here. In fact, we have two past presidents of FAO here. In conclusion, there is no doubt that we need to build sustainable cities that nurture a resilient way of life in Africa. And from the foregoing, it is also clear that although designing sustainable cities is a challenging task, the engineering approach is the only sustainable one. Therefore, there is no better time than now to start the process of training and retraining engineers to take up the challenge. As a matter of fact, engineering education must incorporate ideas and concepts that would ensure the building of sustainable cities in Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mrs. Margaret Oguntala, for doing a very good job to that presentation. We thank you very much. While we get Engineer Ibikule Ogunbayo, FNSC, FANG to speak, I think Engineer Martin Manoa actually sent a message to apologize. I'm sure he is back with us, but we will let him get himself set to come and finish his presentation after we've listened to Engineer Ibikule Ogunbayo, FNSC, FANG, and I believe that he will also be able to do justice to his own presentation. And I'm very sure that the president of NSC is taking notes, because he's the chairman of today's occasion and is going to be able to wrap up on what has been said and ask questions. But we will also be having, after Engineer Ogunbayo, we are going to have the current president, the newly inaugurated president of FAEO, Mrs. Chibot, who will be speaking right after Engineer Ogunbayo. I hope Engineer Ogunbayo is ready, but then let us not forget that we are still going to have Engineer Martins to conclude his presentation. Very, very important. And let me also let us know, in addition to the fact that the NSC is going to share this in the platforms and also in their websites, we have made the necessary arrangement on our own parts to get the communique to the African Union, ECOWAS, and the African Development Bank, because this is an Africa-wide conversation in terms of sustainable cities. So let me call on Engineer Bikunle Ogumbayo, FNSC, FNNG, and past president of ACEN and past president of COREN, to speak to the topic, sustainable cities in Africa, engineer's perspective. I hope we have Engineer Ogumbayo.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much, sir.
Between the lead presenter, engineer, my good friend, whom I call MB, yeah, we did very well. Between himself and Engineer Guntala, they've given my contribution. Engineer Guntala in particular dealt with the topics that I was planning to deal with. So I will not go through the process of making a screenshot, so I can keep it short, especially as we are running out of time. I totally agree with Engineer Guntala that engineering is going to be at the core of building sustainable cities. Unfortunately, when these decisions are being made, it is the engineer comes somewhere after the economists and the politicians have taken a decision. So they don't ask us. But one thing we do know is that we have a great role to play. Now, are we ready for that role? I say, yes, we do have the knowledge. We have the skills. We do not have enough of the people who can perform the role of building these cities, but there is nothing wrong with partnering with those countries or those professionals who have additional skills. So number one is that we must realize that where we do not have the skills, we can always outsource. There is nothing wrong with asking other people to collaborate with us. The other thing that we also need to do is to say, how achievable are the SDG 11s? Many of you will remember the previous SDG 8s, and the amount of success that was achieved was, well, between 1 and 8 was between 10% and 30%. I'm looking at the SDGs now, and many of them are supposed to be achieved in 9 years' time. And I'm saying to myself, is this feasible? Even from an engineering point of view, how feasible is it to achieve all those 7 or 8 targets in SDG 11 in 9 years' time? So the next thing we need to do is to prioritize and say, we will not be able to have city-wide Wi-Fi and facial recognition. However, we will have water. So let us start by taking those targets and saying we will be able to have water for everybody in cities. So we start with the cities and say, let us do this one. And then we go to the next step. And those areas that we can achieve, we aim for it. The problem, of course, is that all these things are good, but where is the money going to come from? There's no money. Where you have a budget of 400 million naira or dollars for a country, half of which is spent on paying salaries, the amount that is left for trying to achieve all these nice things is limited. So I say, no matter what we do, we must be realistic and try to achieve what we can within our limited resources. Now, there are one or two things that that if you look at the SDGs, it says safe and affordable housing. Nigeria has a deficit of 20 million housing units. Are we able to achieve this in 9 years? And if we cannot, what should we do about it? Where should we lay our emphasis? Affordable and sustainable transport system. The only city in Nigeria today is one of maybe about 10 in the whole of Africa that is making any progress. It's Lagos. The transport system, again, is going to need a lot of massive investment. We know how to do it. We know how to design them, so we have to prioritize them. Inclusive and sustainable urbanization. I would say, no, don't let us urbanize. Let us dissuade people from coming to urban areas. And we can do that by making sure that the rural areas are conducive. So if you make sure that we have water and power in rural areas, then people will not migrate to the urban areas. Engineer Shehu spoke about a village in Sokoto, I think it was, which has a mini grid. There's an even bigger one that is live today. It's in a village called Bamu Bamu in Ogun State. When the mini grid solar powered was put into that village, it was about 3,000 people. And the people were quite happy to pay whatever it was. The people who put it in even gave the people who grind pepper and grind corn, gave them electric motors so that they would use the electricity that was being generated so as to increase the usage. The interesting thing that's happened is that the population of that village has gone from 3,000 and now it's about 6,000, only because they had made life easier for people to live there. So my contention is this: we should not be encouraging urbanization. We should be going in a direction where we're saying you don't have to live in an urban place. Go to your village or your small town and we'll make life easier there for you. There are many areas where I think we can make changes to these SDGs. And my feeling is that, look, really, the SDGs are nice, but let us have the African flavor to it. Let us say that in Africa, this is what we should be aiming for, and not just a wholesale adoption of the UN's energy. And yet we may have been part of the people who drew it up, but I think that they probably didn't consider the peculiarities of the African continent. So I took a look at a city that was started in 2010 or 2005 was planned, called Songdo City in Korea. 40 billion investment as at that time. Number one is that no African country can afford $40 billion to put into one city. But the interesting thing about this city is that it was meant to have by now a population of 5 million people. It only has about 1.2 million. So what are the lessons we can learn from it? The first thing that learned is that because it was built up and everything was shiny, it didn't have a soul. This city was nice, but once you got into your flats, you did not relate to your neighbors, because everything you wanted to do, you could do on your computer or your laptop. You didn't need to know people. Number two is that it was expensive, and only the middle class and upper middle class could afford to live in it. And so whether affordability in a smart city or a sustainable city is feasible, it's something that needs to be carefully considered and engineered into the process. There was a young lady who was being interviewed in this city, and she said that after 1 year, she had to buy a car. They said, why? I said, well, you know, it's all right to say I should walk 500 meters or 600 meters to go and buy grocery, but I get tired of doing it, so I bought a car. Human nature. A lot of things have happened in that city. And I'm sure that anybody now who is designing a new sustainable city should please go there or at least read about this place so that you can learn from the lessons that are available to be learned from there. One of the things that I also found was that it's easy to say we're having a green city. People's perception of greenness can vary. Does green mean it is green because it is using sustainable energy sources, or because you have a lot of trees and open spaces? If you're going to have open spaces and green places, why do you want to plant ornamental trees? Why don't you plant oranges? So that you're achieving the same greenness, but you're also getting a useful produce out of your greenness. It's the whole thing is that I believe, and I will urge, that we have to be careful with what we adopt. We have the skills to do these things. We may not have enough people to do it, but we can always outsource, we can always buy the resources we need. But the important thing is to be sure that whatever solutions we come up with, those solutions suit us and work for us. And this is where I once again commend Engineer Buntana, because your conclusions and suggestions are spot on. There were things I was going to say, and so I want to say thank you to everybody for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ogumbayo, Bikule Ogumbayo, FNSC, FANG. I thought that we could, I thought we should just conclude the presentation by Engineer Martins Manoa, but I want to believe that the president of FAO is waiting to do justice. I want to believe that we will take our presentation and then we'll come back to Engineer Manoa to just come and round up. He's over the NSC president will come and speak to the whole conversation. I think that could be a best way to do it. FAO president.
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. I think we'll go by
English.
that. Yes, thank you very much. We can go by that arrangement. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. So we'll come back to you. Now let's go to FAO president to speak to the topic we're discussing today.
Thank you very much. And may I start by addressing the chairman, who's president of NSC, Engineer Mohammed Babagana, my executive vice president of WFU, and all the distinguished speakers that we have heard today. I am very delighted to have this opportunity to speak to you, and especially because I'm in the company of such a distinguished panel as we celebrate this event, which marks the World Engineering Day. And it's especially very nice for us in FIO because you have heard about the efforts that the WFU made in trying to get this day recognized. And let me just say here that a lot of the effort was undertaken by the African members who were members of FIO, and some of them here today, like Engineer Shehu, and past President Engineer Manua. So it gives us great delight and exceptional pride to celebrate this day today in the company of some of our colleagues. So let me just start by telling you a little bit about FIO and FIO's contribution as an engineering body to building sustainable cities in Africa. We've heard a lot about the engineering contribution to building sustainable cities, and so I will concentrate on FIO's own contributions. And I'll do that by telling you a little bit more about FAIO and what it represents. FAIO is a body that represents engineering in Africa, and its aim is to be the organization that drives sustainable socioeconomic development of Africa through engineering. And in order to achieve this aim, FAIO works to promote the science and practice of engineering for the benefit of society, especially in Africa. And FAIO undertakes activities that create awareness within the society and especially amongst leaders and policymakers of the role of engineering. FAIO also promotes the advancement of knowledge in areas that are required for development, especially in Africa. And FAIO is working to ensure that engineering practitioners and engineering industries are sufficient, competent, diverse, and inclusive, and are engaged in safe, ethical, and sustainable practice. And finally, FAIO is building up its capacity and knowledge so that it will be the repository of knowledge on all matters engineering in Africa. So these goals are not very easy to achieve, and we are still at the beginning of our journey, having begun only in 2012. And we invite you all here to join us. And by all, I mean any engineering organization or entity that is working on the continent. We need to work together on many issues if we are to use engineering to accelerate the development of the continent. We need, for example, to harmonize standards in engineering practice and in goods and services so that engineering skills or products that are lacking in one part of the continent can be served by others within the continent. And although every country is represented by one national member in FAIO, we have room for engineering entities. We have associate membership. And these may be non-profit or corporate entities, universities, etc. So any engineering entity on the continent is welcome to come and join us and lend its voice to the issues that concern us on the continent. I must also add that FAIO operates with regional bodies. And so we have 5 regional bodies. We have the Central African body, the East African body, North African, Southern African, and West African bodies. West Africa is currently under the able leadership of His Royal Highness Engineer Otis Aniaji, the past president of NSC. And these bodies would work with their regional bodies on the continent. So the West African body would be working with ECOWAS. FAIO also works to achieve its aims through standing committees such as those in energy, water, capacity building, infrastructure, women in engineering, engineering education, information and communication technology, and so on. And it is especially within this space that we would like to see engineering organizations bringing up the issues that are relevant to them and will help to drive Africa's development forward. So we really urge you to come and join us as engineering entities. In Africa now, we have a new opportunity with the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And this is supposed to make trade between African nations easier. And by trade, it's not just trade in goods, but trade in services. But this cannot happen without harmonization of standards in our engineering practice, and as well as standards in our goods. And FAIO looks to the engineering organizations that I'm inviting now to join us to come and join us. They stand to benefit from this liberated trade environment, and they can help in identifying priorities that FAIO should be pursuing. We will, of course, try and reach people within the different countries of Africa to find out your priorities. But it would be ideal if you came and joined us and worked with us. Should we, for example, be looking at automobile standards or transportation standards? We've already heard about how we should be linked. Should we be looking at reinforcing steel or electrical cables or electrical fittings and all the things that are needed for a sustainable city? Those within the industry are best placed to tell us, and therefore we invite you to join us in FILE so that we can identify these priorities. And of course, you also help yourselves by doing so. You will see from what I have said so far that today's topic is just so apt. It satisfies all our priorities within FILE and all our current goals. In this topic, for example, for a start, the topic covers an SDG goal, which is a Sustainable Development Goal, Goal 11, which is what FIO is supposed to be promoting. It is related to making cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. It is promoting advancement of knowledge in an area that is very relevant to Africa. Secondly, the event has brought together knowledgeable persons, and we have no doubt that the deliberations and outcomes will provide leaders and policymakers with important direction on the topic. And I was very pleased to hear the organizers say that they have arrangements to send the outcomes from this meeting to the AU and other bodies. For engineering practitioners joining this event, they are also building up their knowledge. Their professional development is being enhanced with new ideas and exposure to the complex situations that they may need to consider in their engineering practice. Engineering is so important to the development of sustainable cities. As we've heard so far, the infrastructure to be developed, water, electricity, communications, and so on, are all within the purview of engineering. And designing these systems to be efficient and sustainable means that engineers must be closely involved in the development of infrastructure plans. We have to work with the other professions in the built environment. We cannot leave it to planners alone. But making a city sustainable means more than just putting the infrastructure together. A lot of thought, as you've heard, needs to go into what makes the city tick. And I'm happy to have heard about examples of sustainable cities that were designed but had no heart. Because it tells us that in designing these things, there's more to consider than just the infrastructure. What kind of businesses are people going to be engaged in? What kind of society do you want to create? Should they all be moving from their homes to one central area? Are you going to design the kind of city that is occupying a very small area because you don't have enough land? And can you achieve the kinds of things socially that you want to achieve in such a city? Or do you have enough land to be able to spread your housing all over? So you can afford to come up with little houses here and there, dotted here and there, and make the workplaces close to the houses. There are all these things to consider, and I find that very often we talk about affordable housing, and those houses need space. They need a lot of land. Do we have the land? Can we afford to spread ourselves thinly? Can we afford the infrastructure that goes with spreading your housing, around, spreading your housing over a large space of land? The time has come for us to take concerted action to guide the development of our cities. The cities, we have existing cities that are continuing to grow. And we cannot continue to compound the problems that we have by ignoring them and just continuing with business as usual. The issue of housing especially must be tackled head on with the aim of some cities having large numbers in small spaces, or where they have the luxury of land, as I've already said, spread them out, and the attendant costs with services will have to be looked at. But these solutions will need to be appropriate for the particular society in which they are being designed. And this will require that those that provide the solutions are reflective of the society. It is therefore appropriate that I call on the engineering society everywhere to promote the inclusion of females in its numbers. You cannot design for a society using the skills and experiences of only part of the society. So those involved in the design must include female engineers. A resilient city is one that can get back on its feet quickly in the face of any disaster. We now have the COVID to contend with, and we have recognized the importance of things like communication. Let us take this lesson and be prepared for any other possibilities, any other disasters that may affect us, so that we are not found wanting. As engineers, we may look at the situation and design the projects to address the problems. But we should ask ourselves that, do we want to continue being led, or do we want to lead? And I was very glad to hear Engineer Margaret Oguntala say that we may need to start developing new skills. If we want to lead, we'll have to find innovative ways of coming up with bankable projects that can be supported by governments and financiers. This is going to be something out of the norm for most of us, and we may need to have or develop new skills to be able to do this. In all these, FIO stands ready to play its role by bringing together the necessary specialists and skills from within Africa and beyond. FIO exists, as I said before, to promote the socioeconomic development of Africa, and we are ever ready to assist and do so. I thank you all once again for your attention and wish you fruitful deliberations as we come to the close of this event. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, I think we should just briefly take the final talks presentation from Engineer Martins Manoa to round up this conversation, then before we bring in the NSC President as the chairman of this occasion.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry I got a bit out, but I'll just do 3 minutes to conclude. I was talking about Lancelia Smart City Master Plan, and this has to have a greater distance, has to be an integrated and accessible public transport system, which proposes a grid pattern, which is a road network, and then the how train is like the train network and bus rapid transport system to include stops at 500-meter intervals in the development precinct. This has been articulated by Engineer Mustafa Shehu. I must thank him for the hat that I'm wearing. He bought that for me when I was in Kano City. So again, economic inclusion, which then means then everything, people may commit to work, job opportunities. All of Africa must work into this, the Dispute, the Lion Park, Porcupine Park, Cosmos City, and Zandsland. It's something that we are so proud of, and the Atlantic City Atlantic City in Lagos must also be better than this thing. So in conclusion, let us use biomimicry opposed to cradle to grave design. We want a cradle to cradle, which means it's green, it's smart, and it also involves local Africans designing their infrastructure. Again, I'm so proud that these buildings must biomimically sound like trees. So my recommendations is we must have, like my president, Kalen, the first female president of the FAO, has recommended we need quality education in architectural, real estate, engineering, and also in the soft sciences, humanities, economics, law. So we also need the industrial 4.0 revolution, where we adopt technologies like Internet of Things, big data analytics, GPS, GIS, nano, and other technologies. Again, we must institutionalize a regulatory economic environment where the ICTs are used, and then have an indigenous innovation system where this green innovation must be Africanized. Again, we must ensure that the World Federation of Engineers, where I'm capacity building chair and Mustafa is vice president, must work with FAO, the engineering councils in all the countries, could be currents, the Zimbabwe institutions of engineers. Again, we have to think sustainability, and environmental product declaration must be signed for green buildings. We must also look at implementation of integrated design based on the multidisciplinary project teams, economists, scientists, lawyers working together. Again, in conclusion, I thank you for inviting us. And green infrastructure investments are generally characterized by a high regime of project management, job provision, opportunities, and also green professionalism. We must look at IRR4, industry revolution, and Africa is the best dividend, where our population, a quarter of our population is below 25. That's money for Africa. So in conclusion, it is the time to re-engineer our education training system for sustainable socio-economic development, so that engineers must also have a voice on the table. If we are not on the table, we are the menu. We must be policymakers as well. So it's time to unleash the skills of our technical profession for them to deliver the successor to the millennium goals, which were not achieved, but to the SDGs, especially Goal 11, as articulated by my sisters, the two presenters here. Now is the time for Africa to develop to be the giant that we want, the Africa that we want. It's very difficult, but like that Kate, Psalms 23 verse 4 says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me." Thou art with me is the technology, the revolution that we need to rebuild Africa. I thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you so much. I apologize for the technology, for knocking me out, but I'm sure I've done justice to my mentor and president, Mustafa Shehu, and my president, Kalian Baushedi, and also my advisors. Thank you very much. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mahon. I know you've actually done very well, and well, we are moving on now. I think right now we have also, let me recognize Engineer Jayola Deyinka, some of the participants from the UK. Quite a number of participants are coming, Engineer Kashim Bakudu, and quite a number of participants from all over the world. So we want to appreciate you. Now, I would like to hand over to the president of NSC, who is actually the chairman of this conversation series, and then to let his voice to what has been said so far. Then we can take question and answer, and then we'll present the next stage. Thank you. NSC president.
First, let me appreciate everybody who is present here today. FAU, that is our parent body. Our obligation is to obey. And that's actually what we are doing. Today, I was caught up in a wave of so many activities. I have issues in a branch called Ikeja branch. I'm having a meeting with them right away. Right now, I'm in a meeting. They have truncate the meeting and come back here. For me, it's just to say thank you and God bless you all. Please carry on the touch, and then I will join you later. My thought for discussion, I have my notes, but I'm not ready to read any note now. Please continue. Let me finish with Ikeja branch, then I'll come back again. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think we can have Engineer Olorunfemi now to just bring up his thoughts.
Thank you very much for the honor. We cannot speak too much on the environment and sustainable development, and it is important we continue to speak about it. As most speakers have said, from the keynote speaker to all the other speakers, we must have an action plan and monitor implementation. The unfortunate thing there, just like Martin Manoa, immediate person already said, is that we must have a voice at the table. Most of the time we speak to ourselves, but I'm glad the narrative is changing. There was a comment by the FAU president, Madam Kalin, that NSC has promised, and FAU has promised that the outcome of this will be taken to the relevant bodies and government. I think that's very important. We've had so much suggestions. Frankly speaking, nothing practically brand new, but it is good to keep mentioning them. From the keynote speaker to Engineer Ogunbajo, Engineer Mr. Oguntala, every president, Martin Manoa. But let us have all this written down clearly and monitor it and review what progress we'll make this time next year by the grace of God. I think that's very essential. It's my pleasure being part of this. Thank you very much. And congratulations, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. I think I have, it's just right that we have the president of ACEN, Engineer Okoroma, who has joined us from the beginning to also speak to this. Just 2 minutes. Engineer is the current president of ACEN.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I extend my protocols to all presidents, past presidents, etc. And as a past president of my institute myself, I want to say this is a beautiful job by the Nigerian Society of Engineers, because the issue of building cities is not the sole business of the town planner. The town planner should normally, in designing any city, has to work with those of you who are going to do the infrastructure. And that's why I'm very, very excited when I heard of the topic, and I decided I was going to be part of it and listen to yes from where the engineer is coming. And I'm happy that the speakers have actually demonstrated the understanding of the subject matter, and they prepared very well for it. Whether we like it or not, cities have become the new reality. Over 50% of humanity they are living in cities, and the number will continue to increase. And the number is even increasing faster in the developing world. And therefore, we must face our reality, and our reality is that the whole world is going urban. And if we are all going, most of us and most of humanity will live in cities, then we should get those cities to be proper cities. It is a pity that, particularly in Nigeria, that a lot of our cities have no plan to guide it. The southwestern part of Nigeria, which is the most highly urbanized part of Black Africa, is a story of shame. Ekiti State, for example, has no master plan for a single town. Ogun State has no master plan for any town. About the master plan, they're just doing it. There are no master plans for Oshogbo and for Iwo, Shaki, and all the other places in Oyo. When you get to Ondo State, maybe master plan for Akure, that's all you have. That's ready. So we have cities that we have never planned. And that is why when some of us who are Nigerians or even Africans are talking at international fora, we are talking from a different base. The other people are talking from a different base because they cannot understand that you build cities without plans. So when they start their own talk, they are talking from a premise that, oh, these towns have master plans to guide their growth, and therefore we go to the next step. When in actual fact, in our own case, we have not even started the first step. And therefore, all of us together, both engineers, town planners, all of us in the building industry, we should all start shouting so that our governments, no matter how deaf they pretend to be, will listen. That most of us will live in, most of humanity will live in cities. These cities must be good. There was some press guys were interviewing me in the course of the week. And I told them, I said, nothing is wrong with our cities. We got the cities we bargained for. When you refuse to plan a city, then whatever you get is what you bargained for. It's like if you have your child and you didn't train that child and the child became a vagabond, they're not saying, well, I have a vagabond child. What did you bargain for? So what we have are cities that have been ignored, that have been totally ignored. I think that's the word I will use. Because we never planned for them. Who is in charge of Nigerian cities? Go and ask the Association of Local Governments in Africa. They always say Nigerian cities are the most embarrassing of all the cities in Africa because nobody's in charge. All other cities will go to meetings, they will say meetings of mayors and etc. There are no mayors for Nigerian cities. And who is in charge? Nobody. The chairman of local government that some of these towns falls under don't even have a clue. So I want to plead that we have to go to first principles, that our political leaders, they don't seem to appreciate these matters. And when all of us, the town planners, engineers, architects, all the other people, start talking to them, hopefully they will hear. Thank you for allowing me to say one or two things, and I hope I've not taken too much of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Town planner Moses Olubunmi Ajayi is a former president of the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners and a former president of the Association of Professional Bodies of Nigeria. Thank you very much for that contribution. What we're going to do right away is to give one minute to our speakers to round up their conversation. I think we've taken note. The chairman is so busy somewhere, but I'm sure that we've taken note. But if you want to speak, please, you can raise up your hand. But however, we want to go from the way we started and also to come back from where we ended it, to just take it up from there to round up this conversation session of this. I would like to take it from this point. Let me have the FAO president to just 2 minutes, I mean just 1 or 2 minutes round up of your conversation, and then we'll take it up like that, and then we'll end this conversation. Mrs. Brother-Chidi, can you just 1 minute to round up your own thoughts? Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Let me just leave you all with this thought, that this issue of sustainable cities will depend on us as engineers. And the solutions that we are going to come up with must be reflective of the societies in which we live. And so do not forget about the other half of the society, that is the female engineers. Make sure that they are included, and therefore it means that you must promote engineering to them. Do not also forget, if you want to be led, then we can continue with the kind of skills we have. But if we want to lead, we may need to develop new skills so that we lead the process of coming up with sustainable cities. The cities, some of them, many of them are already there, and we need to improve them. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'd like to leave you with these thoughts.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you later. And now let's hear from Engineer Kashim, who has actually been raising up the hand to speak. Engineer Kashim, can you just, in 1 minute, your thoughts, please?
Yeah, good evening all. Marvelous presentation from our presenters. My contribution will be an addition to what the speakers have said, or in inclusion to what they said. That is the problem we are having in Africa, most especially in Nigeria, is the encroachment right of ways. Like for the cities, you realize that spaces that are reserved for facilities, water, electricity, and whatever, have all encroached. So in developing new cities, I would want to advise that we must imbibe the culture of the law abiding in reserving all those places for the facilities, because now they have all been encouraged. If you take major cities in Nigeria, if you want to develop the bus system, you realize that you have to demolish other structures. So what I want to say is we must imbibe the culture of sustaining the laws that govern the right of way for the facilities. Thank you very much.
Engineer Ogumbayo, please. While we are waiting for Engineer Ogumbayo, if Engineer Mrs. Ogutala is ready, can we have your own thoughts, your final thoughts, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, I would like to part on these final words. The first is that we must start to develop our youth. We must start early to inculcate the habit or the habit of seeking knowledge to contribute to building sustainable cities. And that means that the engineers in particular must look inwards at engineering education, where it all starts from. And then we must also educate residents of cities about the importance and positive impacts of living in a more sustainable city. But then we must also not forget the fact that, like past President Engineer Olorunfemi said, we must put in place an action plan and also ensure that we monitor the implementation of all these acts that will lead to the building of sustainable cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Engineer Ogumbayo is ready with his thoughts. Engineer Ogumbayo. Engineer Ogumbayo, if you're ready for your last word as we round up this conversation. I know he was talking about promoting, going back to our villages to develop it while we try to reduce urban migration. Very important points to be taken from Engineer Ogumbayo. We must, while we are developing the urban cities, we must not forget the rural areas. I think that's what the thoughts, some of the things we want to take away from him. But if he's here, can we have him for his last thought on this? Now, while we're waiting for him, I would like to have Engineer Manoa to just know your last word. Engineer Martins, your last word on this. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. My last word is sustainable cities are possible in Africa. Africa has got the virgin land. 70% of Africa has not been built. So let's work together as African engineers through the FAO to rebuild Africa and modernize it to be the next 100 years belonging to Africa. So let's work together under the leadership of the FAO, the World Federation, to rebuild Africa. We don't need the Chinese to do our infrastructure. We have the qualifications, we have the knowledge, and we can work together as Africans. My last word is let's work together as Africans, and I'm supporting the leadership of the president of the FAO to group us together to build the Africa that we want. Thank you.
They're very, very well speech. What is important is the zone that is being developed is for Africa, and before you know it, you will see the Chinese building all sorts of structures in those areas. So we the thing that is happening. I think Engineer is speaking from that. I also have Engineer Rashid, but I think you can just 1 minute. Let's hear from you.
Thank you. I want to congratulate Paul for all that has been said today. It's quite interesting. Above all, we must develop positive attitude. We must also be very proactive. Tools and equipment must be provided to achieve the city of our dream. Most importantly, the security, African security must be fortified. With security challenges, all that we have said today may not come to reality. So I think that's what I want to part with. Congratulations for a very successful webinar. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Tools needed, security very important, as that is one of the major challenges facing the whole of Africa. The final thoughts from our keynote speaker. Your final thoughts on this for 2 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Kenneth, for anchoring this program very effectively and very well. And I also want to thank all the other speakers who have complemented the little I was able to bring to this webinar. My last point is that the reality on the ground we find ourselves today in this evolving world is that we have no option but to come to the realities that cities are changing, cities are growing, our communities are growing. We cannot reverse that trend. And the only way to do it is to make sure we adapt to the changing trend. And adapting to the changing trend is to look at our infrastructure, look at how we can make it to cope with our increasing population, with our increasing changing lifestyles and increasing change of environment. So as much as we would want to do almost everything by ourselves, but we also have to realize that we cannot be an isolated ocean. We may need to strategize and also collaborate with a lot of other people from many parts of the world, but making sure that our interest is protected. We partake in whatever infrastructural development is going on our soils. And to invite is to invite them while making ourselves idle, while not getting involved in the development is what we should avoid and we must avoid. But in truth, there is no society that is self-sufficient and that can say it is. I mean, it cannot have anything to do with another society. So we have to grow ourselves. We have to grow our capacity to meet these challenges, and we have to make sure that also the other agenda is also actively involved in whatever we are doing. So I'm glad with the advocacy brought about by the FAO president being a female. We must make sure that our members of our community are actively in the development initiative, all our countries and by our continent in general. So this is what I have to say in concluding this this address. I thank everybody for sparing his time or her time to attend this webinar, and I thank you, CED, for organizing this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It's indeed very interesting to hold this conversation today. I want to believe that we something very, out of this webinar. On our own part, what we try to do every year is to ensure that we bring about conversation that will develop this industry. And also to develop capacity within the industry. And in the process, we are not masters. Some of us are not engineers, even though we have some engineers part of our team. But what is important to us as professionals in our own field is to ensure that we bring about conversation that will grow organizations, grow the industry, and build capacity across boards. In the last 25 years and above, we've been doing this, and we are very happy to do it because we build relationship across this, the industry, from architects to engineers and to surveyors and all of that. So we want to congratulate all the engineers. We want to say a very big thank you to our presenter from outside the country. We want to especially thank the engineer MB Shehu for actually supporting us in making sure this event holds today, because we needed that kind of support, that kind of backing to ensure this conversation holds, because all of us are expected to learn and to benefit from the conversation. And I do believe that we have learned a lot from it. Now, going forward, we can assure you that every year we will continue to hold a conversation around the World Engineering Day, because that's our pledge, and that's what we have pledged to do. And obviously, last year we had it at Sheraton Hotels because there was at that point, the COVID-19 had not hit Nigeria. But this year, here we are. COVID-19 had dealt a very big blow to everybody. So it's not possible for us to hold this conversation with all of us in a gathering like we wanted it to be. But then we have added flight to it, and I'm very happy that people joined from across the world. Therefore, it's important for us to thank everybody. So the FAO president, who has joined us all the way from Ghana, we want to thank you very much. Now, we have added something to this. Every year, we try to look out for professionals, in the industry that have made remarkable contributions and contributed to the development of the practice, and not only that, to the industry and also the growth of the environment. So, Mr. Francis from Namibia, we can have him now. So, Mr. Francis from Namibia,
Good afternoon, colleagues. A very good afternoon from Namibia. I attended this meeting for the first time. Sorry, can you hear me? I attended this webinar for the first time. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for recognizing my presence, my humble presence. I'm very happy to be part of this gathering, and it has been extremely informative. I joined a bit late, but I learned a lot, and I hope one day we can organize such a meeting, such a webinar or a gathering in Namibia. I look forward to meeting you all here. Thank you so much.
The awards presentation. We have just 4 awards to present. Why do we want to present awards? The concept of the African Engineering Heroes Awards. And the selection process is very tedious, because we want to believe that you must be making some impact in the engineering profession and the engineering industry to be able to be rewarded with African Engineering Heroes Awards. Engineer Isha Abdi Mohammed is a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and a fellow of NICE. And is also one of the key personalities that are driving the process of the road infrastructure going on in Nigeria today. I'm sure that every day we tend to listen to most of the conversation that is going on around the Federal Ministry of Work. Just on Wednesday, about 809 billion was approved for various road projects. This professional is one of the drivers of the process in that particular industry. Engineer Ishaq Mohammed, I had done the engineer Ishaq Mohammed that I had said earlier on, and that personality is one of the drivers of the road sector reforms that is currently going on in Nigeria, and I hope we truly appreciate what he's doing and the capacity is building around that sector. I think that personally we all understand that we've been speaking about our keynote speaker today, Engineer Mustafa Shehu. He's a global engineering citizen, and he deserves all the accolades and all the awards that he deserves. When we were doing this presentation, I look at the back of his background. There were, many awards. So in other words, he has received many awards, and this is just another one that we are sharing. And we want to say very big congratulations to Engineer Mustafa Shehu, who has done a lot from Nigerian Society of Engineers to the World Federation of Engineering Organization to African Federation of African Engineering Organization, to all the sectors within the engineering value chain. And if you also look at the establishment, that is MBS Engineering Services Limited, you will have seen that he works almost in all parts of the world, from Peru to Namibia to Kenya. This is a personality that is actually developing capacity across the globe. We want to say a big thank you and congratulations for receiving this African Engineering Heroes Award, which you truly deserve. And your thoughts today was quite rewarding. Congratulations, Engineer Mustafa Balarabe Shehu. Thank you, sir. Now, the next one, Engineer Olumuyiwa Alade Ojibola was also a past president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Ojibola was also an immediate past president of the Association of Professional Bodies of Nigeria. Engineer Ojibola is also a fellow of the Academy of Engineering, and he has made remarkable contribution to the engineering practice and profession and built capacity across the industry and the engineering value chain. We want to congratulate Engineer Ojibola for this award of African Engineering Heroes Award. Congratulations, Engineer Ojibola. The next person is Engineer Lagunju, who is a partner, is the managing director of the firm where Engineer Ojibola is the chairman. Engineer Lagunju, yes. Engineer Olawale Lagunju is a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and he is also one of the top players in the engineering practice in civil engineering in Nigeria. And today we are rewarding him for doing Nigeria proud in terms of engineering practice. Thank you very much, Engineer Olawale Lagunju, for receiving this African Engineering Heroes Award. Congratulations to you, sir. So I think we have done justice to the award session of this presentation. I think the next thing I want to do now is to present certificate. I'm sure I have also given the award to Engineer Ishaq. Engineer Ishaq, whom I have spoken well about, about the Nigerian roads infrastructure currently being done by the Federal Ministry of Works. I think I have mentioned quite a lot of things about what he has done. Engineer Ishaq is also being rewarded with the Engineering Heroes Award. Now I'm going to present the certificate of appreciation certificate of appreciation. So my engineers will bring in the first one, and I will mention the name before you go to the next person. Certificate of appreciation. And this is the appreciation certificate has to do with the speakership and all of the professionals that have shared their thoughts with us today. Can we have the certificate on screen now? Yes, that's the first one. The first certificate, Engineer Babagana Mohammed, for being the chairman of education. And although he was not able to speak with us, we would have lost it. But because he said he had some issues that he was sorting out. We want to thank you, Engineer Babagana, Mohammed Babagana, for sharing your little time with us today. We appreciate you. We'd like to say a very big thank you to everyone that has made today possible. The certificate of appreciation will definitely be delivered to every single person that have made contributions in terms of speakership today. We can assure you that we truly appreciate this particular presentation. Like I said earlier on, this presentation, we are making the necessary arrangements, which has been concluded, to present the communique and the video to the African Union, African Development Bank, and the ECOWAS office. Because the presentation to us, we believe, is very germane to building cities across Africa. And to that extent, I want to thank every single person that have made contribution to this particular conversation. We want to also use this opportunity to invite you to a physical event on Friday at the Abuja at NAV Center. Engineer Otis Ayeji, His Royal Highness, who is 70, will also be honored with a conversation around reimagining engineering, education, and ethics, and building back better. So we are inviting every one of us to that particular event. It's at NAV Center. Invitations will go out, but we will maintain COVID-19 protocols as much as possible. But the conversation will revolve around reimagining engineering, education, and building back better, and which is very important and in line with the MDG as well. So we want to say a very big thank you to everyone that have made today's event successful. And we want to thank you for the opportunity given us to also, host you today. And we can assure you that the CED magazine will always be available as a platform, and the publication will carry this particular as a cover story in the next edition. And then, which means that every platform that is available, we will use it to promote this conversation, because it's a thought-provoking and it's quite enlightening to all of us. Let me just, as a final parting word, let's have Engineer MB Shehu to give the final word, and that will be it for today. Thank you very much, sir. Okay.
So I want to cede this opportunity to Engineer Kalen Boshedit, the president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations. Let her give the closing remark.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody. This has been a very, very fantastic day. For the engineers of Africa to get together to work on the Africa that we want. I am firmly convinced that technology is on the side of the beginner, and certainly, Africa is among the beginners. And I am so happy that we have the opportunity to take the latest technology and take advantage of it. But for you to make effective use of technology, you have to be organized. And that has been the biggest challenge for us as a continent. This event today is a major step in getting organized. And I think as we build up FIO, as we build up all these regional institutions, Africa will be the winner. And let me thank the Nigerian Society of Engineers and all the organizers of today's meeting, you know, that you have added significantly, you know, to the Africa that we want. Thank you, everybody, and have a good, safe trip. And we will continue our struggle to save Africa and build what I call the group, you know, competence. Generally, we have a lot of very good individuals, but we need to combine our effort into a group, you know, competence, and that's what we are heading toward. Thank you once again, and everybody have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. We truly appreciate you. And on that note, we would like to say a very big thank you to everyone that has made this possible, for everyone that have been able to speak to the topic that is very important African-wide, which is sustainable cities, building sustainable cities in Africa, the engineer's perspective. This is a very important topic. And we believe that, just like has been said by Engineer Kwame, it's going to be, you know, we will further this conversation. And we believe that with the support of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and Korean at all times, and also FAO, African can unite and build Africa for Africa and build cities, livable cities that will be sustainable enough for Africa to live in. Africa has been described as the next destination of wealth, even though Africa from generations remained the best destination of wealth. And we believe that when we are building back better, we will be able to grow within our own strength and our capacity. I must thank everyone on behalf of all of us and say thank you. And hopefully some of you will join us either online or physically on Friday next week on the 12th of March in Abuja for another conversation on engineering perspectives. Thank you very much and have a very good evening.